Robbie and his wife Sarah lived in a cozy suburban home in the idyllic town of Willowbrook. They were a happy couple with 2 children, 8-year-old Mia and her younger brother Jake. Life was perfect, so they thought. Until one fateful day when a seemingly innocent purchase plunged their family into a nightmare. It all started with a simple search for crib beds on Craigslist. Robbie and Sarah were remodeling their children's bedrooms and wanted to find something inexpensive and stylish. After a few days of browsing the classifieds, they came across an ad for 2 IKEA crib beds for sale, as well as wall art to decorate the room. The seller turned out to be a middle-aged man named Mark, and during their phone conversation he seemed genuinely pleasant. The ad included pictures of the beds, and they seemed like the perfect addition to Mia and Jake's rooms. Robbie and Sarah arranged to meet Mark at his home to see the beds and wall art in person. Willowbrook is a close-knit community, and they felt confident about it all. The couple liked absolutely everything and made the long-awaited purchase. A week later, Mia started complaining of an itchy and painful sore on her arm. At first, Robbie and Sarah mistook it for a small insect bite, which is not uncommon during the warm summer months. But soon new sores appeared on her skin. They were red, swollen, and had an ominous appearance. It became clear that this was not a simple allergic reaction. Concerned about their daughter's condition, Robbie and Sarah took Mia to the pediatrician. The doctor was puzzled and suggested allergy testing, but the results were inconclusive. Mia's condition worsened, with fever and fatigue. A mysterious ailment was undermining her health, and her parents desperately searched for answers. As the days passed, the family's once happy home became a disaster area. Mia's room became ground zero of her mysterious condition. She was bedridden and covered in itchy sores. Robbie and Sarah tried every remedy, from changing laundry detergent to changing her diet, but nothing worked. Their little girl was in agony. One night, as Sarah was putting Mia to bed, she saw a small insect crawling across the sheets. The sight sent shivers down her spine. A suspicion crept into her mind, but she couldn't bring herself to believe it. The next day, Robbie examined Mia's bed frame more closely. His heart dropped when he discovered the undeniable evidence: bed bugs. Robbie couldn't believe what they were facing. They had unwittingly put a nightmare in their home. They had purchased not just beds, but a horrifying infestation that was destroying their family's well-being. The first thing they did was contact Mark, who had sold them the beds and wall art. His response was as unexpected as it was angry. He stated that the beds were in excellent condition when he sold them and denied their accusations. Robbie and Sarah had no choice but to hire exterminators to fight the infestation. When the exterminators got to work, they confirmed the worst: the bedbugs had traveled beyond Mia's room and infested the entire house. Robbie and Sarah had to replace all the furniture, and the house was tented and sanitized. Mia's health gradually began to improve, but the trauma of the ordeal was not going away. Robbie and Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. They had trusted Mark, believing him to be a decent man, and he had sold them a nightmare under the guise of 2 simple beds from IKEA and a few wall paintings. The family's sense of security and trust in their community was forever changed. The experience was a harsh lesson for Robbie and Sarah, a reminder that danger can come from the most unexpected places. They will always remember that summer when an insidious contagion infiltrated their happy home and their daughter's health came to a head, all because of a simple Craigslist purchase. In a quiet suburban town, far from the bustle of the city, lived 2 friends, Lisa and Evelyn. They lived in a cozy 2-bedroom apartment in the center of town. Their friendship grew stronger over the years, and they always supported each other. One sunny afternoon, Evelyn, an avid cat lover, approached Lisa with a twinkle in her eye. "Lisa, you won't believe what I found on Craigslist. There's an adorable young cat up for adoption and I think I want to take her." Lisa raised an eyebrow. "That's wonderful, Evelyn. But you know Craigslist can be unsafe. Are you sure it's a good idea to go alone?" Evelyn appreciated her friend's concern. "That's exactly why I'm asking you to come with me, Lisa. I don't want to get mugged or anything. Besides, it's always more fun when you're around." Lisa giggled. "Okay, I agree. Let's go see your little feline friend." The friends went to the address listed in the Craigslist ad. They were greeted by an old, charming house surrounded by a white picket fence. The cat's owner, a woman named Sarah, welcomed them warmly into the house. The cat, a gentle little creature with amazing blue eyes and fur as soft as silk. Immediately won Evelyn's heart. Evelyn immediately felt a connection with the cat and decided to adopt her. Sarah assured them that the cat was healthy and had all her vaccinations. Relieved, they handed over the adoption money and left with the cat, whom they named Luna. On the first day, the cat explored her new home, occasionally snooping around the apartment in a playful frenzy. But then the situation took a strange turn. Luna began to lose her appetite. She was only eating a couple bites of food a day, and this seemed strange to both Lisa and Evelyn. Maybe she's just adapting, Lisa suggested optimistically. After all, a new environment can be stressful for pets. But even more worrying was Luna's lethargy. She was constantly sleeping, and not just at night, as cats usually do. She didn't seem to have the energy to stay awake for more than a few minutes. By the end of the second week, Evelyn and Lisa realized that something was seriously wrong. They decided to contact Sarah, the cat's previous owner, to get answers to their questions. Sarah's response was far from helpful, but downright dismissive. She replied bluntly, "She's healthy, that's your problem." Evelyn was deeply concerned. "We need to take Luna to the vet, Lisa. Something is wrong and we can't trust this Sarah anymore." Their fears were confirmed one fateful night when they were both awakened at 3 in the morning by Luna's moaning and prancing around the apartment. Luna's condition worsened dramatically. In a panic, they rushed to the nearest clinic. The veterinarian on duty quickly examined her and informed them of the seriousness of the situation. Luna needed a blood transfusion and it would cost a whopping $2,000. Evelyn's heart snapped at the sight of this astronomical figure and she hesitated. While they were hesitating, Luna passed out right on the examination table. Her condition was deteriorating rapidly. The vet put them to a choice: do the transfusion or say goodbye. The decision was agonizing, but they couldn't let Luna suffer. With heavy hearts, they agreed to the surgery. The veterinarian worked frantically trying to save Luna's life. For 15 harrowing minutes, the room was filled with tension, anxiety, and hope, but the chances were slim. The moment the vet removed the needle from Luna's tiny paw, there was a solemn silence in the room. Luna had passed away. Evelyn couldn't hold back her tears. Lisa, too, was heartbroken. They had paid an exorbitant bill of over $600 for the short-lived blood transfusion and the agonizing news that Luna was gone. As they left the clinic, both women were filled with grief and anger. Lisa clenched her fists, her voice shaking as she texted Sarah, "Luna is dead." The response they received was annoyingly stale. A simple oops from the clerk, as if Luna's life was nothing more than a trifling inconvenience. As they stood at the entrance to the clinic, emotions ran high. Lisa placed her hand on Evelyn's shoulder reassuringly. "That woman knew something was wrong with the cat and sold it to us anyway. It's outrageous." Evelyn nodded, tears streaming down her face. "We learned a hard lesson. Lisa, no more Craigslist cats. Luna deserved better." Frank had been saving money for Christmas for what seemed like an eternity. At 15, his meager allowance and part-time jobs finally totaled $115. It was just enough to fulfill his dream. Frank had always wanted a guitar, and Christmas was the perfect time to get one. One chilly evening, Frank decided to search the internet for the perfect guitar. He spent hours browsing through the ads, looking at every detail and envisioning himself playing a brand new guitar. As he scrolled through the various options, one had caught his eye. The Squier Telecaster he had always dreamed of was being offered for $100. Excitement gripped him, and without hesitation, he sent a text message to the number listed in the ad, expressing his interest. A few minutes later, a reply came to his phone: "Still available, $120. Frank's heart sank a little. He had $115 saved up, and an extra $20 was beyond his means. He replied, "I can give you a maximum of $110. The answer followed quickly, firmly and adamantly: $120 or nothing. Frank weighed his options and thought about how long he had waited for this moment. "If that's the price, I'm out of here," he typed and hit the submit button. The seller, clearly concerned, replied, "You're a fool. It's a great deal and you're a moron for not buying it." Over the next 3 days, Frank received a barrage of angry and abusive messages from the seller. Frank tried to ignore them, Realizing that he couldn't afford to buy the guitar at the seller's asking price, he hoped the seller would move on and find another buyer, but that didn't happen. On Saturday, the situation took a turn for the worse. Frank's phone was silent most of the day. He breathed a sigh of relief, figuring the seller had finally given up. But when the clock struck 11 p.m. and darkness enveloped the city, Frank's phone rang. An unfamiliar number popped up on the caller ID. After hesitating for a moment, Frank answered the call. The voice on the other end was slurred and angry. It was the salesman, and he was clearly intoxicated. "You think you can just walk away from a good deal like that? You're a goddamn coward." Frank tried to explain that he couldn't afford that price, but the intoxicated salesman's angry words drowned out his pleas. The threatening tone of the conversation quickly escalated, and Frank realized he was in a dangerous situation. He decided that enough was enough and hung up, not wanting to continue the conversation. The phone kept ringing, but Frank decided to block the number to put an end to the incessant harassment. His heart was racing and he couldn't escape the feeling of creeping fear. He hoped the salesman would finally realize what was going on and leave. For the next few days, Frank tried to forget the disturbing events. He practiced on his old, battered guitar, dreaming of the day when he could afford a Telecaster. Christmas was just around the corner, and he hoped that he would be able to find a better offer in the coming weeks. But the feeling of unease still lingered, like a shadow that didn't want to dissipate. Frank could not escape the feeling that in his pursuit of his cherished dream, he had encountered something darker than he had realized. James had always admired Nancy's commitment to a vegan lifestyle. She had been steadfastly committed to a plant-based diet for over a year now, and her commitment even inspired him to try it himself. So when he came across an ad on Craigslist offering 5 pounds of free tofu, he couldn't resist the temptation. The prospect of stocking up on tofu for his dishes was too good to pass up. They had listed an address on the outskirts of town. Using his trusty GPS unit, James hit the road on a sunny Saturday morning, determined to find the mother lode of tofu. As he parked his car outside the modest lodge, he felt a sense of anticipation mixed with trepidation. He walked to the front door and rang the bell. The moments that followed remained in his memory like an indelible tattoo. The door swung open, and before him stood a wide-eyed girl of about 8, her blonde hair framing a cherubic face. Next to her stood a huge Rottweiler, who gave a low, menacing growl at the sight of James. A little taken aback by the menacing dog, James cleared his throat and managed to say, "Hi, I'm here for the tofu." The girl winked at him and disappeared into the house, leaving the door ajar. James heard muffled voices and shuffling inside. After what seemed like an eternity, an elderly woman with a back hunched with old age slowly emerged from the dimly lit house. She looked at James with sharp blue eyes and a suspicious stare. Without a word, she reached into a nearby grocery bag and pulled out a Walmart bag filled to the brim with tofu. Her bony hand shoved the bag into James' hands. He felt its weight and couldn't believe his luck. It was truly a ridiculous amount of tofu, and all for free. He tried to thank her, but she ignored him, slammed the door shut, and disappeared into the shadows of her house. Feeling both grateful and puzzled at the same time, James headed for his car. He couldn't wait to show Nancy his loot. All the way home, his imagination ran wild, imagining what dishes could be made with tofu. What James didn't know yet was that his tofu fix would take an unexpected turn. Arriving home, James burst through the front door, eager to surprise Nancy with the treasure he had obtained. He placed the package from Walmart on the kitchen table and kissed her. "Nancy, you won't believe this. I found an ad on Craigslist for free tofu, and I have 5 pounds of the stuff," he exclaimed, grinning from ear to ear. Nancy's eyes lit up with joy, and she hurried over to look at the impressive supply of tofu. But as she began to unpack the package, her expression changed from delight to bewilderment and finally to horror. "James, look at this," she exclaimed. The tofu turned out to be not at all the fresh, pristine product James had envisioned. Instead, it was a set of sad, deflated blocks with the distinctive odor. He glanced at the packaging and noticed something that sent shivers down his spine. An expiration date boldly printed in red ink: 2012. "Is this a joke?" Nancy asked, clearly upset. "This tofu expired 9 years ago." James, his heart dropped. He had unwittingly brought home a bag of expired tofu and couldn't understand why anyone would give it to him. The mysterious woman raised more questions than she provided answers. Both decided that the tofu was unfit for consumption and reluctantly threw it away. However, the mystery surrounding the elderly woman and her expired tofu continued to linger in their minds. What prompted her to give away the spoiled food? In a quiet suburban neighborhood in the quaint town of Rivertown, the sun cast a warm golden hue on neatly mowed lawns and picket-fenced homes. Robbie, an avid collector of vintage video game consoles, had made an appointment with a man named Jamal to purchase an Atari Jaguar, a rare gem in his collection. When he parked the car in front of Robbie's house, his heart raced with anticipation. Robbie glanced at his watch and realized he had arrived exactly at the appointed time. Impatient to get his hands on the Atari Jaguar, he headed for the front porch. As he approached the house, however, he found it eerily silent and Jamal was nowhere to be seen. Doubt crept into his head and he decided to send Jamal an email asking him to meet him. Sitting in his car, Robbie waited patiently for a reply. It wasn't long before his phone rang with an incoming message. It was Jamal, informing him that he had to make an urgent grocery run, but he would be back in a few minutes. Robbie breathed a sigh of relief and decided to wait. Sitting on the hood of the car, Robbie couldn't help but consider his surroundings. The neighborhood was serene and everything seemed so ordinary. However, the tranquility was broken when a few neighbors came outside to see what was going on. They spotted Robbie sitting in his car and called out to him from across the street. "Hey kid, are you waiting for Jamal for games or drugs?" One of them asked with suspicion in his voice. Caught off guard by the unexpected question, Robbie stammered. "Just games," he replied. His heart raced as he realized something was wrong. The situation was taking a strange turn, and he began to think about leaving in a hurry. But no sooner had he packed his things and left than Jamal's car pulled up to the driveway. Robbie's relief was short-lived when he saw Jamal, a rather sinister-looking man with a heavy shadow and a scowl on his face. He watched in shock as Jamal climbed out of the car and appeared to scold his young daughter, who was sitting in the back seat. Tears came to the girl's eyes and she trembled as she held back her father's anger. Robbie felt uneasy as he witnessed this disturbing scene. Jamal's behavior painted a disturbing picture of a man not only untrustworthy, but violent. The situation became increasingly awkward when Jamal's wife, an outwardly pleasant woman, stood by his side, anxiety for her daughter read in her eyes. Suppressing his anxiety, Robbie headed over to Jamal's house to finalize the deal. He handed Jamal the agreed amount and in return he received an expensive Atari Jaguar. Jamal's behavior remained unpleasant, and Robbie was anxious to leave the unsettling atmosphere hanging in the air. Walking out of the house with the Atari Jaguar in his hands, Robbie couldn't escape the feeling that he had just entered a world far removed from his own. This neighborhood, once a symbol of suburban tranquility, revealed a darker side he had never expected to see.